My guest today is someone that I ran into for years. I would just run into her in the craziest place, literally run into her. Every time there was an LGBTQIA business panel, we'd both show up. We'd look across the room and there would be the other one. Eventually, I started referring to us as the ones, both of us. We are the ones. What I didn't realize for a while is that we'd actually crossed paths earlier. Target has been a longtime supporter of family equality, the organization that I'm deeply connected to. So Alexis Kantor had already been in my orbit. I just hadn't really put it together yet. But when I did not let her get away. I think I told her we have to be friends. And then I recruited her to the Family Equality Board, of which she is now the co chair. And we also, as it turns out, live about 5 minutes from each other. That wasn't the case then, but it is now because we just had to be closer. And honestly, she is one of those people who I believe that some people are just meant to be in your life, and Alexis was just meant to be in my life. But here's why Alexis is on this show specifically, not because she's my friend, though she is, and I'm very, very grateful for that, but because she's done something genuinely hard. Probably a lot of things that are genuinely hard, but this one is the one I want to explore. She walked away from over 20 years at Target with a VP title, a team of 200 people, and a very comfortable future because, and she said this in a post on LinkedIn, I remember it and I'm going to reference it later. She said that she would have been fine staying. She would have been fine. But the statement that Alexis made in leaving Target was a fine life wasn't enough. She's the co-chair of the Family Equality Board. She served as the interim CEO of the organization. She's co-founded an AI startup. And she and her spouse have opened their home to LGBTQ plus youth experiencing homelessness, not as a performance, not as a statement, but as a practice. The question that I want to sit with and explore with Alexis today is, what does it cost to stay somewhere past the point of integrity? And what does it take to trust what you're walking toward is worth what you're walking away from? So, with that, I am thrilled to welcome my dear friend Alexis Kantor to Don't Tell Me What to Do. Hello.
Hi. I'm so excited to do this with you. It's my very first podcast.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. And I'm so grateful to anybody who says yes. But right now, I'm hitting up the people who I kind of feel solid they won't say no.
I feel like I have a Nancy problem though, because I'm pretty sure I've never said no. Like I feel
No,
like
and I've roped you into
you,
some stuff.
which I
Let's
love.
be
I love all
honest.
of it. I love all of it.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I have some questions for you, but as we've discussed, I'm ready for this to just take whatever shape it's going to take. But I'd love to dive in if it's okay with you.
Let's
All
do it.
right. So you have said that even in the most forward-thinking companies, change comes too slowly. And you and I have had conversations about this, and the world knows it. And you knew there were better ways to work. And I really kind of want to start there, right? Not that realization that things move too slowly, but I'm super curious. Like, do you have a specific moment? Is there is there a day or a time or a title or an initiative that you were in charge of when you knew, like, there's better ways to do this and I can't do it alone? Like, when did you know?
I feel like I knew on my very first day at Target when someone told me not to be gay. Literally, that was their advice. Don't tell anyone you're gay. I was like, okay, that's going to be a problem. So I think like I knew. I knew, and before I was maybe organizationally savvy enough to go about it differently, I think I went rogue instead. When I think about even the title of your podcast, Don't Tell Me What to Do, anyone who's known me, my parents included, would say that I've always been more spirit of the law than letter of the law. And so instead of fighting the machine, I created change so the machine had to accept it. And so I used to call it quiet pilots. So I would do things that I didn't tell a lot of people about. Like we would do it on my team. And look, some people you can get with emotions, some people with data, some people with who knows. And so I knew I had to come at this from every angle. And so I would try some things. And so if they were successful small, then how could I maneuver them into strategy, into ways of working, into other things? And so for me, my very first learning of this is when, before flexible work, before any of the stuff, I had an incredible leader on my team who was struggling with their family, their kids. They needed to be home at a certain point, and we just didn't work that way. And I was like, we're going to do a quiet pilot. You're going to talk to your team. We're going to set goals. We're going to have KPIs. You're going to work in a different way. And it meant her being home in the morning and home in the evening. And guess what? That quiet pilot was amazing. And she was more successful. The team was more successful. All the things we knew were going to happen. And we were able to push. And
Mhm.
so I am very pushy. Any no is just not a yes yet. And so I took the quiet pilot philosophy, and I think I was pretty well known for pushing, taking some risks, and then parlayed that into roles that allowed me to get in at an enterprise level. Because the thing that frustrated me most and why things move so slow is it, taking a step back. To me, everything's connected. Everything in the world is connected. Everything at work is connected. It's connected strategically. It's connected because we have a shared purpose and values. And so I always struggled with, how can you not see a change here means a change all over the place? And so I really took that thinking and then leveraged it to get into more strategic roles so that I could do things like create a 3D team. So we changed how we designed and developed. I could get into transformation so that we could create and modernize our own brand operating model. Like, it just, I don't, I'm just not satisfied that the status quo is where we should be. And if you're not open to change, then you're the constraint on your team as a leader, right? If I
Mhm.
didn't stay curious enough, if I didn't stay courageous enough to try new things with my team and learn, then my team would never deliver. I
Yeah.
really saw myself as an entrepreneur. I had a total segue. I had a VC ask me, like, I've never seen an entrepreneur come out of a full career of corporate. And to me, that made no sense to me because that's not
Mhm.
how I performed inside big corporations. I knew I didn't look like another VP. I didn't sound like another VP. I wasn't going to work the same way. And so I don't know when that moment was, because I only
They
know
were
how to,
all moments.
yeah, I don't know any other way to be, right? I don't know what roles to break because I'm not even sure I see them sometimes.
Mhm. So I'm intrigued by the fact that you gamed the system or you went around, the
Go around all the
barriers,
time.
right?
Yes, yes,
Around, under, over.
yes,
It was just a matter of finding the right way to prove your point, right?
yeah,
Whether it's data, stories, success, whatever it
totally.
is. So, did you have a reputation for being somebody who got shit done, or were you covert and these, little victories would just show up and people would be like, "Where did that come from?" Did you get the credit you deserved in the process?
Oh, that's a great question. I think looking back, yes, right? I'm not sure I would say it in the moment, but yes, I think I was known for doing things differently. I think I was known for being a truth teller. I was known for saying the things, and my words and actions married up so that we could deliver something bigger than just one team and, one thing.
Mhm.
So I think I did get credit. However, if I were to look back now and give somebody like myself advice, I also became pretty invaluable to leaders. And
Mhm.
so it was easy not to move me. It was easy not to push me forward. It was easy not to let me go,
Mhm.
because I was indispensable in that moment, because I was a fixer. I could get things
Mhm.
done. I was seen as a whisperer to different leaders. Like, I remember getting in a role and someone was like, "Thank God you're there, because you'll understand, you can speak that language, you can figure it out."
Mhm.
So I felt like people saw me as kind of a Rosetta Stone for a lot of
Mhm.
different, languages.
Mhm.
So I do think it was helpful, right? It's why I got moved around, but I also think it's why I was solidly positioned where I was and made
Mhm.
that next move harder.
Mm. So people sponsored you to the degree that you made them look good, but
Yes.
but you didn't see the advancement you were probably deeply worthy of
Mhm.
because you couldn't make them look good if you advanced
It's
much further than
exactly
you
it.
were.
It's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you became more competition probably. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your career. Like, I'm curious where you were before Target and what the
Mm,
various titles were you were in Target. So I want to hear a little bit about that. But in sharing that with me, I'm super curious about where you found the confidence to play that
mm.
way in the system, because the system itself does not train people to take initiative, to assume risk, to understand strategy, to try alternatives. And I can say that having never worked at Target, and I might be the only person in town
You
who's
might
never
be.
worked at Target, right?
Yeah.
But but I mean any system, any corporate system, I feel comfortable saying does not train us to
Mm-mm.
be leaders, frankly. Doesn't
Yeah.
train us to be entrepreneurs for sure. So I'd love to hear about your career, and in sharing that, tell me what gave you the courage to be who you are.
I'm going to do it in reverse order. Arnold
Good.
Cantor, my dad. I love my parents. You know that. I love them so much. And my dad said something to me as I was kind of going out into the world to try to start my career. He said, Alexis, the person sitting across from you at the table has a drawer full of things. And when you walk into the room, it's open and they're waiting for you to ask for it. And if you don't, they shut the drawer, you walk out, and they win. And he said, your job is to empty that drawer every time. And I sound
Mm.
like I'm from New Jersey because I can't say draw. But that, it's true. It's true. It's totally true.
I never noticed that about you before. I was like, is she doing this because she's acting? Or is she
No,
doing this
it's just,
because
it's my accent. It's the one word that
I
really
like
Jersey
it
comes
very
out.
much?
Yeah. So
Very much.
I think everything I want, I mean, to give my dad a ton of credit, I mean, he encouraged me to take up space. He put me on boys' teams as the only girl. Like, he just did things that to me just built me, right? I didn't know another way to be. I just loved it. I loved that my dad gave me the confidence to be this queer out loud Jew who took up space and asked for everything in that draw every time. And so I think I just brought that in to every situation. And when you make a decision, especially I'm a little older, um, it's
Shut
when you
it.
make the decision back, we're not that far apart.
You'll always be younger than me, and that's what makes
I
me
will. That
angry.
is true. I will. I will. But when you start your career and you make the decision to be out, you're coming out all the time. That takes, unfortunately, some courage. And I knew because my dad and I talked about it, I was going to have to be 2 to 3 times better than anyone else to be my authentic self. Because I also knew that if I showed up as anything other than me, Target, Victoria's Secret, which I can tell you about, none of them are going to get the very best of me. And so if I'm working to actively hide or cover, then my brain power is already at like 50%. um, so I loved what I did, but I was so proud of who I was that there was no compromise. And so when I think about going into my very first job at different divisions of the Limited, Cacique, a very small company, but then Victoria's Secret, which is where I was before Target, I learned a lot. Victoria's Secret didn't have the same promise of a conscientious corporation that Target did. It was gross, right? It was Epstein and sexual harassment and
Wait,
promoting
Epstein?
men. Yeah, Les
Oh,
Wexner and
yeah, you
Epstein.
know what?
Yeah,
I didn't even make that connection until just now. That dude that gave him his whole career.
all started with Les.
My God.
And so you
Wow.
imagine the culture there, right? And so to me, what I loved about it is I was going to go to law school, but instead of going to law school, I started working in retail and fashion and manufacturing and design and development and all of it. And it stuck. I loved it. And I was lucky enough at Victoria's Secret to have some incredible leaders who said, you're smart, you're talented, you may not know this, we can teach this part. And I think I was lucky, right? I was lucky that I got to get in and I loved intimate apparel, not just because I'm queer, but because um, I I
You
love the
loved intimate
puzzle.
apparel. We're going,
I
let's put a
did.
pin in that.
Let's put a pin there, right? Although, side note, I did worry because at the time when I first started, you worked with actual live fit models. And I was very afraid of how will my fit models feel or perceive me based on being queer. And I had to like talk myself. I was like, I'm better than a lecherous dude that's showing up in these sessions, which was true. So it's just interesting that I had lots of thoughts about it. But what I loved about intimate apparel was the engineering, the satisfaction of figuring out what's right about a product. Idea that you could build suspension bridges out of lace. Like there's just, I loved everything about that. I loved that it allowed me to travel the world, learn different cultures, lead with a global view. Victoria's Secret, I did all kinds of things. I developed product, color, materials. I got to spend a lot of time in factories, including being in the Middle East for a while, working there directly with the factories. And it,
Wow.
right. And to me, it taught me there's a million right answers to any problem. And it was my job to make the answer I picked right.
Mm,
And so I look back at everything good and bad with gratitude. Victoria's Secret was really, really hard and it was time for me to go, but it taught me leadership lessons. I knew what I wanted to be. I knew what I didn't want to be. I knew what it meant to deliver quality and excellence. It was like the boot camp of retail. I mean, it turned me into what I am. And
mhm,
I think you hit different ages and different stages and you start to ask yourself some questions.
mhm.
And I had been, I think Jackie, my spouse, and I had been together maybe 4 years, and I started to question, like, is this really it? Like, is this the company I
Mhm.
should be at? What else should I be thinking about? And I am so lucky that Jackie said to me, stop, take a break, figure it out. And so for me, that pause meant I got to do all kinds of things, work at a doggy daycare, work at UPS, take college classes again, do all the things. It's a whole other story about trying to convince UPS after an executive like career that I wanted to work there. I was like, I want to be a loader. I'm going to be great. And I was. I learned about being a teamster, like all that stuff.
I love that.
Right. I just loved it all. And it was in that break that I realized I did love still what I did, but I needed to find a different company.
Mhm.
And as I started to look around and I applied to a technical design job at Target and online, I sent my resume. It felt like the black hole. And because like, what's going to happen? I don't know anyone there. I've never like been to Minnesota. And like within a day, I got a call. Within 2 days, I was here in Minnesota interviewing. And then a week later, they said no to me.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought it went great. And I went from literally not knowing anything about Target. I didn't grow up with it to like really wanting this because I saw something special in the people I talked to and the promise. And then they said no. Everyone loved me, but they didn't do intimate apparel. That was my expertise. And so they were like, no. But a week after that, they called me back and said, actually, we're going through some changes here. And I think we've got something for you. So it's so interesting because I feel like Victoria's Secret and Cacique taught me just the how to be so good at designing and developing and the start of my leadership career like path, getting to Target and deciding on day one who I wanted to be because I was not going to compromise. I was not going to be something that they wanted. I mean, shit, Nancy, they hired me with a blue mohawk. And so I'm like, you know what you're getting. And so that, again, back to that very first day when someone said, don't tell anyone you're gay, I was like, well, now I'm gay for pay. You tell me what not to do. And now I'm like gayer than I've ever been in my entire life. Because for me, I lived in this bubble. I came out to no fanfare. My family is lovely. And gay just was not I didn't think much about it. I thought a lot about being Jewish because I had run into some situations like that were highly anti-Semitic, but I didn't really think that much. So then when I got to Target and I was like, oh my God, I'm the queer person, right? I'm this queer leader, or it changed my thinking. It changed my brain a little bit. For some, maybe it would have made them shy away from being in the spotlight. But for me,
Mhm.
it felt like my superpower. It felt like it was the thing that allowed me to break rules. It allowed me to quiet pilot. It allowed me to be different. And so instead of seeing it as a disadvantage, the minute I started to seeing it as an advantage, it was everything. It was everything. It
Mm.
unlocked. so much. And I have to, I give massive credit to Jackie, because there was one day that Jackie said to me as I was struggling with something, she's like, you gotta trust your own process and not compare it to somebody else's.
Mm,
And maybe there's a reason you're not like this other person, or you're not going to show up like this leader. Trust your gut, trust what you're doing, trust your vision, because I think when you're a futuristic person, you're up against people saying, I don't see it.
mm-hmm.
How do you
It's not
know?
going to happen. Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so again, I think, I mean, how lucky that I have parents and a spouse and kids that all prop me up,
Mm,
right? I think
mm-hmm.
what I learned going from Victoria's Secret and what I gave versus what I got, and then coming to Minnesota and starting a whole new life here, we did it together. Like every decision we made, like I had Jackie in my corner. So we decided, what are we going to fight for? How am I going to show up? What am I going to get fired over? Like these were
Mm-hmm.
very real decisions. So I didn't show up at work not knowing. I knew my
Mm-hmm.
red lines. I knew what I was going to fight for, because to me, to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And I was not going to waste any moment being in the corporate system,
Mm-hmm.
not fighting for something better. The same VC that said, I just don't see it. I don't understand how a corporate person's all of a sudden an entrepreneur. They made me think, because I don't think they understood the relationship I had with corporations.
Mm,
As a queer person, the Limited, for all its problems, they were the first organization to recognize my relationship. The government didn't, but the Limited did, and they provided same sex partner benefits, which meant a lot to our family. It allowed us
mm-hmm.
to have the flexibility for one of us to stop working one place and start somewhere else. Stuff that other people don't always have to think about. But so for me, my relationship with corporations and the power of good that was
Mm-hmm.
there seems so clear to me. And the fact that any corporation was not using that power to the full extent of what they could do to change society and culture and
Mm,
systems, I'm not okay with. And so I really, really believe that I would rather be there and try to change things than be outside of it. And then
mm-hmm.
when it was time to go, it was time to go.
Well, so let's dig into that a little bit. So, I mean, there's so much that you brought. This could be a 7-hour conversation, I swear, because like you're saying things, and I'm like, I want to ask about that. I want to ask about that. The big thing that I want to ask about is how did you leave Victoria's Secret and let underwire still be a thing? How did you let them? How come you didn't do away with underwire for the good of all humanity? Can you
I
please?
underwire. I'm wearing one right now.
Okay.
If they fit, they shouldn't. It should be comfortable.
Listen, I'm not talking about bras on this podcast. Did I ever tell you about that podcast I was on with that woman who said you need a new bra, and it was the Head and Shoulders podcast? And I was like,
Oh.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah. She's
Well,
probably going to listen
80%
to
of
this
people
too because it's
wear
2
bad
local
bras.
women. I know one of them is probably going to listen to this at some point, so she can know that I carry that with me wherever I go. I have a crappy bra,
Although,
apparently.
bra, like, again, for me, clothing, uh, can build confidence. And I got to watch
For
that.
sure.
One of our kiddos through the Avenues Connect program came to us at 15. They were going to their first prom, they were trans, and they trusted me enough to show me what was happening. And I built a bra, some boobs, some stuff. And when I got to watch their face when they put on this dress and felt all the things that they should have always felt. That's what I love about product development, right?
That makes so much
Right?
sense.
You get to make
That's
someone
beautiful.
feel great. And at Target, what I loved about leaving VS, look, it's easy to develop when you can pick any material you want,
Mhm.
anything, because because you're charging some crazy amount of money for it. What I loved, and this taught me so much, is coming to Target. It was the democratization of quality. It
Mm,
was bringing a bra that I had just made at Victoria's Secret to Target and making it at $9.99, right? Like that taught me equity in a whole new way. That taught me the value of what you can deliver to people when you care and when you tie your purpose, your values, and your business plan together.
mhm. Yeah, that's everything. And so
Everything.
before I jump into this next question, I'm curious about that. What was it about Target that
Mm.
attracted you from because I have a feeling whatever it was had an expiration date. So I'm
Did,
curious
did.
about what
Um,
made you decide to make that leap.
I had decided that any company I was going to next needed to do more good than harm.
Mhm.
And when I thought about Target and I did my research and I saw their legacy and their history of the Daytons and philanthropy and purpose and values, and they were bringing quality and access to like really cool stuff to everyone.
Mhm.
How does that not get you, right? Like, how do you not think about getting into an organization like that that seemed to be able to do so much good?
Mhm.
And at the time, it was also super exciting that they had not had a big own brand portfolio. And
Mm.
at the time I came in, they were hiring so many people because they were building this new machine. And it was cool to be part of something that was starting up. But I also learned that when you're a startup inside a big corporation, you are going to face a lot of resistance. You have people in old roles that they're like, we don't need you. I'll never forget my first meeting with the merchants that in Intimate Apparel. They were like, oh, so glad you're here. Great experience. Don't touch anything. And I was like, what? I was like, what am I doing? And again, another great lesson because I'm like, okay, you've just told me what not to do. Now I'm clearly going to do it. But I love being underestimated and I love looking for that moment that you can just crack wide open. And so I
Mhm.
had my very first trip to New York. It was the beauty of bras is it's a small industry. So I left Victoria's Secret. I went to Target. I still worked with the same factories and people. My email just changed, right? So I go into my very first meeting in New York with a company that I've worked with a long time. And I knew Target was getting just played in costing. And so I was like, okay, they've told me not to be quiet. They've told me to sit and observe. I'm done. This is my moment. And so I was in the meeting. I got to ask the right questions. I saved a bunch of money. And as we walked to our next appointment, they're like, you can say whatever you want. And so I just think, again, you get to show up. And if you show up and fight the good fight, then you're going to have your moment. And if you don't, to me, I'm like, I'll elbow my way in there. Like, I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
So coming to Target, it wasn't only their brand promise from like a product standpoint, it was their brand promise and how they wanted to show up in the world.
Mm.
And that felt good for a time.
So, how long were you there exactly?
1 month shy of 21 years.
Wow. And
Yeah.
what was your title when you were done? Just out of curiosity?
Oh, that is a
I know
great
it's a
question.
mouthful.
I
It's a
know
total
it is a
mouthful.
mouthful. I think I left at VP of owned brand strategy and operations.
Holy smokes.
So, yeah,
And a 200-person team when you were,
I had a
or was
big
it bigger than
team,
that?
a big global team.
Yeah.
It varied, it
Yeah.
ebbed and flowed. It was one of those. Um,
So, from the outside looking in, that looks like what everybody should want. The definition of
mm,
success, right? So, what was actually happening on the inside toward the
mm.
end that made you start to consider, is that all there is?
Oh, I break it down to three things. I think most people think it was what happened in 2023 with Pride, but that was just the last thing for me. And so if I really think about it, it was I stopped believing in our leadership. I thought we lacked a visionary and a futurist. I stopped believing we had a solid strategy. And the final line was when we aren't going to, when I started to hear the kinds of comments, conversations, and leadership decisions that to me went completely against our values, that was it, right? It was those three things. And what I love is as a family, we always had kind of like quarterly check ins. What are the things that mom's going to get fired over? Like, when do you say when? And so this was a moment. And so, unfortunately, what got me there, and I hate to say this, and I've thought a lot about this, I let Target break something in me.
Mm.
And I had a hard time putting it back together. If I think about it, I knew that break was coming. Nancy, that's how the end happened. But really, this is not a surprise to me. I knew this was coming. I knew it through several CEOs, right? Like I think about, I came in under Bob Ulrich. And what I loved is that he was a CEO that likely he and I wouldn't agree on much,
Hmm.
but he put the brand first, and you could see what that did for the company. And then with Greg Steinhoffel, he and I had problems.
I'm
um,
sure.
and so much so, like, and again, for me, I made every decision and I have no regret. Like, I made the decision when we stepped in it and there was somebody who needed to be out front, that I was the person, right? I was the queer target leader. Like, I get it. And so I had made those decisions time and time and time again. And I think for me, it was the shiny bullseye that everyone got to see was not what was happening on the inside, right? We were getting these awards and all that stuff, but I knew what it took inside. And so I think for me, there was a very clear moment when I had to go down an escalator and be confronted with the MoveOn.org crew and parents and all this stuff after Citizens United.
Mm.
And it was in that moment that I was having this, like, I had all the media training. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what I had to do. And inside my head, all I was saying was, I'm with you, right? I
Mm.
feel what you're feeling and I'm doing all of these things. And I remember, and this was not a great thing to say to your boss at the time, but he asked how I was doing after it was all over. And I said, well, today I was a whore for Target and I need to go home and think about what I need to do next.
Wow.
And I went home, and by the time I got home, Jackie's like, what is happening? And I said, I just did this, and I, I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And I know I wanted to stand up, but now I know I have to go in on Monday different. And so what I realized in that moment was Target used me strategically. And now I was going to use Target, not
Mm.
in a bad way, but in a way that, guess what? Every day I am there from that point on meant I was going to push and I was not going to leave it alone. And if you want to get rid of me, get rid of me. But it's hard to, because I delivered. And
Mhm.
so to me, I knew, right? That was, I mean, think about how long ago that was from the 20 plus years that I was there.
Mhm.
I knew what I was up against every day. I knew what I was doing. I made the decision because I thought if you could be there again, you could do more good. And so when it finally got to that point and I felt the break, I had to go. It was time. Nancy, this killed me because the day it all happened, where it really all like kind of came to a head, I was supposed to lead a DEI session where we were changing our own brand strategy. And I'm like, in the past, I would have figured it out. I would have shown up. I would have known what to do. And in that day, I said, nope, I had to walk
Mm.
out. And I didn't like quit, but I was like, today is not a day you get that from me.
Mm.
Somebody else gets to do that. And I knew I disappointed a lot of team members there because they were like, but you're that voice. And that was the hardest thing for me. I think what kept me there the longest was I loved my team. I love my
Mm.
team so much. I thought I had the, like, if we were in the Olympics of retail, I had gold medal team. Like, I loved what we had built. I loved the capabilities. I loved it all. But in that day, I was like, I think something changed.
Mm.
And then because I hate a problem without a solution, I went home. I created a strategy on how you get rid of me. And came back in and told my boss that it's time to go. And of
Wow.
course, there was like, no, but I gave options. I was like, I can go in 2 weeks. I can go in 2 months. I can go in 6 months. I can do this. And I literally laid out a strategy. I laid out how things could work, how you transition me out. And it took 6 months, but we got there.
Wow.
But
So.
here's the thing. The other thing that drives me crazy about that, though,
Mhm.
is even as I was leaving, I was trying to do it different. This is not how they transition leaders. They don't do that. They get rid of people and you bring people in. And so even in my leaving, Nancy, I was fighting an uphill battle. I was fighting
Mhm.
HR because they're like, we don't do this. I was fighting lots of people. And then in the end, fast forward, it's my last day. And HR is like, man, we really should do this every time. I was like, who do I need to punch in the face? I mean, I would never punch someone in the face, but
That's a
like
given.
that, right? Well, maybe. But that, I was like, seriously, it just proved to me. I was like, I was too ahead
Mhm.
to be there any longer. And I loved what I did for my team. Thank you, because You were my parting gift
Well, that was
and
fun.
got to speak to my team. But I think it just brought it all home. It brought home that I had spent 20 years fighting an uphill battle that I
Mhm.
loved, and now it was time to leave.
Mhm. Yeah, well, it must have been hard. I mean, I think we all watch from a distance as Target sort of, they took DEI and sustainability initiatives and all of that got scaled back so significantly and it was pretty clear why. And you were inside when it happened. But, I'm curious what you think, like, what does that tell us about corporate values? Are they real or are they baloney?
Ugh. They could be real, but again, it goes back to what kind of leader are you going to be? I
Mhm.
think a CEO of Target has the power to change systems and culture and people's lives. But if you're only thinking about that through what you're going to sell, you're not marrying up the people, the purpose, and the profit. You're only thinking about one angle. And to me, that's always going to hold you back. And so like I think we've talked about this maybe before, but when I didn't like how something was going, I didn't just sit there. Like when Brian Cornell came in and we'd had some tough moments, there was some stuff with, I think, North Carolina bathrooms. And I didn't love how he showed up. And so I gave him my real thoughts on how that was. And instead of just sharing feedback, I said, I'd love for you to come to my house on the north side of Minneapolis and meet. I think Avery must have been little, maybe 8, right?
Mhm.
I need you to come to my house and meet my non binary and my trans kid. And I want you to see. I don't want you at a ribbon cutting. I don't need you on the north side, like celebrating some bullshit. I need you in the real thing, having
Mhm.
dinner with my family to understand what it means to be able to use a bathroom safely. Because all I'm asking is for my kids not, I want them focused on school and learning and playing, but my kids were worried about their safety in the bathroom. And so it was fascinating. He said yes, which I didn't expect because then I had to desperately like text Jackie and say, you have to make dinner for the CEO of Target. And Jackie takes that stuff really seriously. But he came over and honestly, it meant a lot, right? He showed up, he was willing to listen and learn. And I think what's so disappointing to me is it makes me question how real, because how do you go from sitting at my kitchen table with a multiracial, queer, and trans family to the point at which you're making the kind of decisions you're making? And so I again, this goes back to, I know as a leader, sometimes you're going to make people happy and sometimes you're not. And if you do it with integrity and accountability, I always slept well. I just think there's something about, you are given the biggest privilege, you're given the biggest parachute.
Mhm.
Shame on you for not pushing as far as you can because you have this privilege. And so I got to watch, CEOs go to events and act like they supported all of this. But if your everyday decisions and how you spoke about the communities you serve, if that wasn't real,
Mhm.
I don't know. I just don't get it. I never understood how you could be one person at work and one person outside. I always joke that I'm just not that smart, so I can't do it. But the reality is, we're whole humans. I was a good leader when I was treating the person across the table for me as a whole human, not this person that I get to work with at Target. So shame on any leader to become so removed that you forget. I
Mhm.
think you forget. Like, what do they say when you stop taking commercial airlines, that you lose sight of the reality of things? And I think it's very easy with money and power to forget why Target was important, why those values were important, and why companies that lean into that are exponentially more successful.
Mhm. Mhm. Ain't that the truth?
Good
That's
Lord.
I mean, I think what you've hit on is something that I've always believed, and that is that business has more power in this country than oftentimes legislators because, they have the power of the purse and they're
Mhm.
not limited by party, so they can really go all in on values and you said it, change the culture if they choose. The problem is they don't
Yes.
for the most part. And I think this desire pretty consistently, I get their job is about shareholder value, but sometimes the long game is hard, but so worth it. And, I
Yes,
mean, that short term shareholder value, and Target's a great example, can lead to long term systemic issues that really changes the positioning of an organization in the broad scheme of
totally.
things. Like, I mean, who Target was when you were there, even in the last few years, and who Target is today. I feel badly as a Twin Cities resident speaking poorly of Target. And I don't think we're speaking poorly. This is an observational conversation. We've observed
Well, and we
these
need
realities.
Target. Like
Yeah. Hmm.
Minnesota needs Target, right? Like
Yep.
we need them to be successful. I want them to be
Me
successful.
too.
Some of my best friends are still there and I want them to
Hmm.
win.
Hmm. And it's almost a cardinal sin to say anything even slightly negative about Target in this area, right? Like, and yet I do think that when I'm a believer that the boycott started here, and I do believe that now we've got whole communities who feel the same way. We held Target in such high regard that the disappointment is almost impossible to get past. And I think
Yeah.
the changes that you made in your life as a result of that disappointment took real courage. But I think what you've described here is a life of courage that was, held up, or the foundation for it was created by that unconditional love that you experience in your family of origin, which is really unusual because you and I are both Gen X. And I have
Hmm.
often talked about how, boomer parents treated their Gen X children like furniture. It was just another thing in the house that you got to move around. So you were deeply engaged with your parents, whereas mine were like, don't talk, you're an idiot. In fact, we're going to have the housekeeper. I understand how that sounds. Someday I'll do a whole show. We're gonna have the housekeeper feed you early so that we don't even have to have dinner with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was a very different reality. So you are someone who has made a career out of courageous decisions. And another one that I'm really intrigued by is you and Jack became a host home and foster
Mm.
parents for LGBTQ plus youth experiencing homelessness. So not it wasn't just a criteria that you had, it was people you showed up for, desperate humans who were in harm's way. And that's, you didn't join a committee, you didn't just write another check, you like showed up and invited these people into your house and your family and your dinner table. And when I say these people, you refer to them as your children.
Mhm.
So how did that decision actually happen, and what has it done for
Mm.
you and your family? And
Yeah.
also, have you experienced any failure
Yeah.
in that work with these folks facing their unhoused realities?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Here's one thing too, as I back up, I think one of the big differences, especially now with me being in the Midwest, when you're raised Jewish, at least how I was raised Jewish, it's an expectation that you show up at the kitchen table and you have a voice, that you are a part of the debate, that you are sharing your opinion. Like I go again, if I think back, even my bat mitzvah, I my rabbi let me give my sermon on I'm not sure if there's a God, and if there is, she's for sure a she. Like, so I don't, again, like
This
that's
is why
just
we're
me.
friends,
And
All of this is
exactly.
why we're friends. Dear God.
And now
Maybe
I'm
I
a
could
total
have gotten a
atheist.
job in corporate.
Come
Jeez.
on. Well, and it's why I was an atheist Jew. But like, so I just like that muscle like was always there. And I, so for us again, as much as my parents were incredible, there was still shame and different feelings as you weren't maybe quite like everybody else. And so I got to watch us raise Avery with queer privilege. Like Avery's whole world was queer. Avery was non-binary. They came out when they were tiny little in elementary school and were like a warrior and an advocate for themselves, getting bathrooms and other things. And I just watched the power of what happens when you're raised without shame. And it was powerful. And so we were at an event and we ended up hearing about avenues for youth, and it was one of those things where when you hear something Then for Jack and I, like you're busy all day, you're getting ready for bed, you're in bed and you're catching up and it's the last little bit. And every night after the event, we're like 3,000, and there's more now, 3,000 kids experiencing homelessness a night, most Black, brown, and trans on repeat for us. We're like, okay, how can we have been as lucky as we are to have all the love and support? Nobody should be lucky. Like, you're not lucky to be loved. So the idea for us was, this was an incredible organization trying to do so much. We had a lot. And what I loved about the organization is you got to do as much as you could. And it was youth centered, formed youth at the center. And so it was our job. You write a file, you write all the stuff about your family, you write about what you're looking for. And for us, because Avery, we started doing this when Avery was 2 and did it until Avery was 12. And we only stopped because we have so many kids that never really left our family that we're like, okay, this is a lot of people that we're supporting. We just learned so much. And for us, so again, somebody might have a room that they could give a kid, and that's great. For us, it was like, look, we have a 2-year-old, you have to be part of our family. And so the organization focuses on kids like 15 to 22. We often had a lot of the younger ones, and we had in-depth training. It made us think a lot. There's power dynamics, there's race dynamics. Can you imagine, like, we're strangers and all of a sudden you're expected to like move in and sleep under some strange roof the first night.
Mm-mm.
And so it made us think about all kinds of things, the privilege we have, how to use that, what does advocacy look like. One of the mistakes I made is I thought I was doing good because one of our kids really needed to get in with a therapist. They didn't need an old white lady. They needed a therapist that represented who they were. And so again, when you talk about failures, tons of learning, but I love that it gave control back to these kids who honestly were magical, but were not supported the way that you should be. Because again, when I think about who they are and how non-binary and trans folks, they will change our future. I mean, that just not having a binary thinking, like, it's just, there's so much about how the future is better with that diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, it was, once we heard it, we couldn't unhear it. And then we were so lucky that Avenues was so supportive. We had tons of questions. We were the first ones to ever do it with who had a kid. And what was great is Avery never wanted siblings, but then all of a sudden was like, I think I'll take older siblings. That's great. And there's, you can talk about privilege with your kid, or it's action again. And
Yeah.
so Avery got to watch kids walk into our house with maybe a tiny little bag full of stuff. And
Mm.
it made Avery think about things differently, made us think about things differently, made us show up in a different way. I'll never forget the big layoffs, the big riff at Target. I had to lay off 26 people. And at the time, I think having the family that we had gave me such perspective. Because while it was awful what was happening, everybody was going to be fine. And so when I think about what these kids did, look, we're good. We gave, although sometimes I say we're real assholes, so this just like balances out the goodness for us.
Right.
Because we can be. Or
Sure.
I can be. Jackie's nice. But I think it's just, I don't know, you do better when you know better. It made me a better leader. It made me a better mom. It made me a better citizen, right? I thought about things differently because I now had different lenses and filters that I could use.
Mm-hmm.
We got to celebrate proms and first dates and first jobs and then first apartments and getting engaged and then having struggles, right? We got to see it all. But we also had, somebody let, a friend in and, steal a lot from our house. Like, again,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes you really think about everything. It made us question where we put our value. Like, do I think this thing in my home is valuable? Or is it the lives of the people in my home that are valuable? And
Mm-hmm.
like, so many lessons, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have changed a single thing about it, except there was one moment that I did turn into my dad. So I watched my dad after somebody had been sending anti-Semitic hate mail to me, but I kept hiding them because
Ooh.
I didn't want my dad to see it. My dad ended up seeing it. He's like, I know you know where this kid lives. Get in the car. We're going. And I was like, what? We can't do this. My dad, Nancy, literally busted through their garage door, got inside the house, held the kid up on the wall. Parents are screaming. My dad throws all these letters, and my dad's like, "You going to do something about this?" And by the time we left, we could hear them yelling at the kid. But all of a sudden, fast forward, here I am, we'd just been robbed, essentially.
Wow.
And I was like, and I'm trying not to say anyone's name. I was like, get in the car. I know where they live. And I was like, oh my God, I am my dad. But instead of keeping on that, I was like, we got to change things. And so we were supposed to go to a Lynx game that night. And I was like, look, this is what family does. We had a terrible day. Shit went sideways. And we're going to figure this out. So let's go. And so it taught me like resilience and perspective and uh, so much. So much. I know we did some good, but honestly, that it did more for me than any of the kids.
I love that. I have so many questions for you, and we're coming up on time, and I'm like, "Dear God." But you're now the co-founder and CEO of an AI company, um, and you're building the thing you always wished existed. What is that thing?
Oh
Tell
my
us
God, I
about.
love that. Yeah. So while I was at Target, I really believed that, again, nobody on my team should work the way I did
Mhm.
25 years ago. Shame on me, right? And so I was lucky enough to be kind of interested in 3D and some other ways of working. One of the leaders on my team and I, we were mentored by automotive and aerospace companies to help us figure out. I'm like, if you can prototype those kind of products, then we can for sure do a t-shirt. And so I got scrappy and started to find efficiencies in different ones of my team so I could start to find ways to put people into this kind of 3D thing. And so from that, I created with Sandy Gagnon, who's an incredible leader still at Target, an industry consortium. So it's over 100 brands at the time. I'm sure it's bigger now. It's called the 3D Retail Coalition. And it was about working together because I do believe everybody has their secret sauce, but there's a pre competitive moment of industries just doing better and being transformative. And so if I fast forward, I was able to make some really good changes at Target. We were known in the industry for leading in 3D, but I could never get the full vision of connection and a connected system. Everything just stayed so fragmented. And so for me with Virtue, what we've created is a shared operating system for product creation that connects design, development, and production all in one place. So Virtue takes you from idea to tech pack, which is important, in five
Mhm.
to 7 hours, not 5 to 7 days.
Mm.
AI handles all the work, right? AI handles your dirty laundry, right? They automate the tasks, it organizes the data, it keeps your teams aligned from concept all the way to production. It's less rework, it's fewer samples, it's faster. You should have more confidence in your decisions across every team. I'm a big believer in faster, yes, but it also has to be better. So for me, this is more than workflow, it's work that flows. Decision flow, task flow, knowledge flow, creative flow. And so if I was going to leave where I was to create Virtue with two incredible co-founders, we need to go from hustle to flow. And that's
Mm.
what I want to deliver for teams.
I love that. So, as I think about just your life, you've got family equality and the work that you do there. You've been a host home for many young folks. You're building a startup around how creative teams actually work, and to me, there's a through line there. And it really sounds to me like it's about who gets left out of systems that weren't designed for them. That is the thread, and I'm curious, was that a conscious thread,
Yeah.
or did you have to look back to see it, or is that who you are? That's how you are.
It's a pretty conscious thread because
Mm,
honestly, part of my early conversations joining forces with Brett and Aditya, my two co founders, was about bringing equity and access. A lot of tools are very expensive. And I wanted to make sure that Target could use a tool like ours, and so could a Black trans woman who was starting their own company. And if I could give a small company the ability to show up like a Target and all of a sudden get in places because now they have what looks to be a huge team behind them, but really it's just smart technology, then we were doing good. I just never believed that anyone getting ahead needed to leave somebody behind. And
Wow.
so, whether it was at Target or it was building our own thing, we started very simply. We wanted equity and access, and we wanted to work with good people making cool shit. Like, that's it. Like, we wanted to keep it simple. And if you keep it simple and clear and, purposeful, everything else became really easy.
Oh, I love that.
Not building it's hard.
Oh,
We've already
of
talked about it.
course.
It's
Yes,
stressful.
yes,
That
yes.
part's
Getting
not
money,
easy.
not easy. Yeah.
Not easy. Not easy.
I know. Don't I know it? Okay, I have one hot take question, and then I have these
Mm.
rapid fire questions that I haven't landed on yet. It's like
I
every
love it.
time I try them, they don't do what I want them to do. So I've got a new set for
Okay.
you, and we're gonna
Okay.
rapid fire through them. But the first question that I kind of want to, close out on is what's one piece of common career advice that you believe is absolute bullshit?
Mm. God, all of it. It's terrible. I think, said in all kinds of different ways, if the advice you're getting is to change who you are, then you are in the wrong place. And I think back to a moment, and again, be clear, I got hired at Target with a blue mohawk. They very quickly were like, we see something in you. We think you got a long runway. We think there's potential there. I'm just not so sure about your hair. What's going to happen? And I was like, well, I really hope that whoever I'm talking to is not really looking at my hair, although I'm sure it looks good. They're listening to what I'm saying, because what you look like, who you are, is your superpower. And so for anyone to tell you to change that, nope. And I've tried different things. I think when early in my career, you try to wear the right thing, you try to do this thing. But what I realized is I am me. And what's interesting is I'm going to call bullshit, because corporations want to use it when it makes sense. Really fast, there was a magazine years ago that did the 5 women changing Target. And it was like, I was one of them. And I was ready. I had like cute jeans. I had a black blazer. I had a cute t-shirt, great heels. And I was like, I'm ready for this. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna be one of the 5 women. And even just calling me a woman, sometimes I struggle with that. But that's a whole other conversation.
I get it.
Um, and when I was in makeup, I had my jacket off and I have tattoos. And I could see some corporate comms folks chatting. I was like, oh shit, what's going on? And then they came to me and they're like, hey, how would you feel about no jacket? I was like, oh, I feel fine. I said, huh, interesting. When it serves you, you're okay that I look different. You're okay that I'm not a cookie cutter of anything else. But oddly, when we're in the moment and you're trying to tell me what I need to do differently to be successful here, it is about how I look. And can you imagine a world where we see all the different ways people look and dress as awesome, and the thing we're really focused on is what you're delivering? Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Like
So,
isn't that what we should want?
and so
That's what
to
this
me,
whole podcast is for, frankly. Like, shouldn't
yeah,
we want to
yeah,
just stop judging each other, do good work, and improve the quality of life for everybody? Like,
done.
shouldn't right?
And
Like,
guess what? You can't do that if you're compromising who you are.
right.
So don't take it. Like, look, feedback is a gift. You can't return it,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, ain't that the truth? All right. So I'm going to hit you with rapid fire questions, not because we couldn't go off on another tangent, because we absolutely
Okay.
can. And rapid fire, first thing that comes to mind, do not overthink.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Tell me the moment you knew the rules were wrong. That's it. That's everything.
Uh, when I first played softball, my dad taught me fast pitch, but I was in a slow pitch thing, and my dad's like, "Hey, just pitch it until you get thrown out." I was like, "Is that really what we should do?" And I think I honestly, it went in there, and I was like, "You just do it until you get kicked out." So
Yeah,
that was how I
that's a
started.
great life. Just pitch it until you get thrown out. What's the decision you made that everybody around you thought was wrong or risky?
Leaving Target.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's so easy.
Yes. What system were you operating inside that wasn't built for you or for the people you were trying to serve or work with?
Oh my God, all of them.
Mhm.
And I say that only because, like, and again, I'll use being at Target and being in the nonprofit world, and being a foster parent, if government, corporations, and nonprofits could work together, the synergy and the change that could happen is incredible. So each system sucks, but what we could do to create a new system together could be everything.
That ain't the truth.
Mm.
What has pushing back cost you? Like, not even professionally, I mean personally, what has pushing back cost you in your career or in your life?
Well, promotions. I think there were moments that it cost me being present with my family. I think I wanted so much to be impactful and make a difference
Mhm.
that there was a time that my family got the very worst of me, and that cost me. And I love my spouse so much. We're celebrating 27 years, and that takes a lot of work. And I could have lost that if I had continued to not give Jackie, Avery, and every kid and my parents at
Mm.
least some parts of me that were better than what I was giving them.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. And I do wanna point out, every time you talk about your spouse,
Mm.
I have great admiration, a around how you 2 talk about each other, but you especially, 'cause I see you more, like, there is absolutely no doubt that that person is the center of your universe,
Well, we're a
and
team, right?
you're
We're
a
a team.
team, and that's exactly where I was going, that
Yeah.
you are very clear on why you're able to do what you've done,
Yeah.
and it doesn't happen because, you're not doing it alone,
No. With every
and
promotion I got, Jackie got promoted.
yeah, yeah,
And that's
yeah, and
really how we treated it.
I think that's something, I do a lot of women's events, and oftentimes I say the reason that men run the world is not because they're better than us. It's because they have these magical fairies at home that they never mention, that they never say anything about, who actually make their world go round.
You got it.
And I think the reason it's so striking when you say it is because it's so uncommon
Yeah.
for that to happen. For that to happen. I'm gonna wrap it up and I don't want to. So you're gonna have to come back. That's all there is to it. We're just gonna have to do this again.
Again, I think I've already said it's always a yes to Nancy. That's it.
I
That's the
appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. So, I wanna say this out loud in closing because I mean it. Watching you move through the world the way that you do makes me better, makes me braver, and it's something that I'm super grateful for. Not because you make it look easy, because you don't, and I think that's exactly why it works. You make it look worth it, and I wanna thank you for showing up on this podcast, this brand new, who knows if it's gonna go anywhere, 2 listeners. Thank you for subscribing, mom and dad. Thank you for being my other person on the panel. Thank you for being that person. And thank you for doing the actual work in your actual house with your actual family. I think it matters more than most people will ever know. So here's what I keep coming back to after this conversation. Alexis didn't burn anything down. She didn't blow anything up. She just quietly refused to let a comfortable life become her ceiling. And that's the thing about conformity. It rarely asks for your soul all at once. It just asks for a little more patience, a little more pragmatism, a little more, this isn't the right moment. And before you know it, you've been waiting for the right moment for 20 years. And Alexis stopped waiting, and look what you built. Look what you built. So here is everybody's homework. Go find out what family equality is doing right now,
Mhm.
especially if you have any capacity to support LGBTQ plus families and youth, because the need is not getting smaller. And that's at familyequality.org. And if you're in the creative and design technology world, keep your eye out for Virtue. And what's the website for that? It's virtue3d.io. Is that it?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. It's early and it's going to be something. You can follow Alexis at Alexis Kantor on Instagram and tell her that the show sent you. So this has been Don't Tell Me, don't tell you either. Don't tell us what to do. I'm Nancy Lyons. Come back next week because we've got more rules to interrogate. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
I'm breaking all your rules. Yeah.